Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts, support your mental health, and learn the tips and tricks that thousands of parents have used to craft their ideal birth. We will answer all of your questions, the scary ones and the weird ones, to help calm your fears and feel confident going into your birth. I'm going to help you redefine what birth and motherhood looks like and how to embrace your journey. I've intentionally crafted a list of experts to help you navigate pregnancy, explore your birth options, and plan for postpartum so that it can be a time of soaking in your tiny human. We're going to go there on all the hard topics so that you can dive deep into finding your confidence and freeing yourself from fears around birth. With over 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I created this podcast as a way to share the resources parents need to make educated and informed decisions about their care in pregnancy and childbirth. This is a birth community driven by evidence-based information and research in hopes to help you explore your options, understand your rights, and know what choices you have along the way when it comes to birth and beyond. I'm your host, Hee Hee. Now let's get to the good stuff. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is like 4 years later, 3 years later since our last time you were on my podcast.
Maybe. It's been a while. A lot has happened. You've created a human. You birthed a human. You created a product. You birthed a new company. You've had a lot of life changes since we've talked last.
Yes, a lot of birthing and creating for sure.
A lot of creating and growing and birthing and launching. Yeah. So you are the founder of Koze. Tell us a little bit about Koze.
Yes, Koze is a perinatal products company, and I set out to begin Koze because I wanted to invent the world's first absorbent disposable bra made of biodegradable materials based on my feeding journey, which I'm sure we can get into. And what I didn't know is that to get it right would take about 2 years. Like we will launch this year at the 2-year mark of setting off on the journey. And in the meantime, we've created 2 other products, one of which is about to launch and one that's on the market now and in some of your client bags called Nip Gloss. I believe there's just so much white space in and along the perinatal journey and in maternal health that anything we can all do to make it a better place, we got to get to work.
Yeah, I think perinatal and that maternal space and just like women's health in general is a space in our country for sure that has been ignored, right? And so I think that white space is good because people like you and I get to come along and fill it. But it is sad that we've made it to 2024 and we still have all of these questions and all of these places where women are like, oh, I wish this existed and it doesn't, or oh, I wish we had this data and we don't have it, or oh, I wish we had this to help me do this and we don't because no one has looked into it. No, there's never been funding. No one cares about it. Or the hospital system just says, well, this is the way it is. This is the way it's always been. Every woman before you has done this, so you too should just suffer through almost.
Literally, I was sleeping on a towel because of my awful leakage. And I thought, we're here today because for hundreds of thousands of years, people have been having babies. And why in 2021, when I gave birth, after a traumatic birth, am I sleeping on a towel? Like, why? And I'll get into why I couldn't just put pads in a bra. But yeah, it was just like, this is literally crazy.
I like that though. I like that it pushed you to a place where you were like, I'm going to change the world for the next person. And the next time that I have a baby, I don't want to go through this. And again, it's sad that we have to be the inventors, but I appreciate your gumption to take that on because that is a big task. It is a big asking to create a product that's literally going to change the world. So tell us about your birth story. Would you mind sharing your birth story? And for listeners, this is not necessarily a happy birth story. So if you are not in the business of hearing a traumatic birth story, or if you are really doing the work to protect your own mental space, go ahead and fast forward a little bit to Garrett's postpartum experience. But I think that some people could really benefit to hearing your story. For some reason, it's very comforting to hear other people's traumatic stories once you've had a traumatic story because it makes you feel not alone and it lets you know that you as an individual didn't do anything wrong, that our system is really messed up.
1000%. And I actually did your entire birth lounge course leading up to it. And I think that's also why I knew things were going right, because I knew what my options were. And
Mhm.
someone actually explained this to me recently, but that your brainwave state is different when you're in the state of birthing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain this to another doula the other day, where I was like, I knew my options and I knew that it wasn't what I wanted, but it's almost like I couldn't find the words and I couldn't during certain pivotal moments to speak. And oh, that makes sense now. But I did the course, your course. I did all the preparing. I did a baby boot camp or newborn boot camp class. And when my due date came, I didn't feel anywhere near close to going in. And I knew I had the option, thanks to you, to be like, no, I'm going to wait. I'm good. And so the doctor's office was like, we need to come in and do a non-stress test. I'm like, okay, fine. So 3 or 4 days after my due date, I went in and they're like, he looks great. Everything's great. You seem great. They're like, but let's schedule you tomorrow for induction. And I was like, no, I want to wait. So they're like, we're going to have the office call you about that. Like they were already giving me grief about it. And we hit the 1 mark post due date. I called in and I was like, they said to call for another non-stress test and then we'll talk about induction. It's like, I really want 2 more days. And they said, if you don't get in here by 5 a.m. tomorrow, we can't guarantee we'll have space for you. That's how my
Can,
birth started.
can we pause right there and just tell all of our listeners that's not how that shit works? If you
Thank you.
needed something, your hospital will get you in, right? That is such, first of all, it's a threat. And second of all, it's an
Yes.
empty one at that.
Yep.
And it really makes me so mad because if a mom and a baby needs something, a hospital is going to get them
Going
the
to do it.
care that they need. And so
Yep.
to dangle that carrot over someone's head and say, if you don't do what I say, then I'm going to revoke your privileges to induction or
Yep.
being able to come here, that is obstetrical abuse.
Yep.
It's so
It
telling.
started there before I was even there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say is it is so telling that the abuse starts before you're even in labor for so
Yep.
many people.
Yep.
That's just how our medical
Yeah.
system a lot of times is set up. And it takes
Yeah.
individual doctors to stop that train. It makes me think of the meme where it's all the matches and you light one and it
Yep.
takes that one match
Yes.
to put it out.
You're literally that would be the meme of my birth. And you're right how it starts early. I had put up a fight, like a very strong fight to even have a doula there that I had met in New Hampshire. And
Like your hospital didn't want you to have a doula?
they said I was not allowed because it was like April. So we were like on the other side of the first year of the pandemic. Like it had already been a year. But they were saying, we're not letting this. It's special cases. I basically went almost up the chain to the CEO of the hospital. Like that's how hard I fought. And on my 38 or 39 week appointment, this one doctor came in and said she had stereotyped me based on the fact that it said in my chart, will have doula. She walked in and lectured me for 20 minutes of her own birth story and how I needed to let go and prepare that an epidural was going to be the best and I shouldn't have expectations. And when she finally stopped venting at me or lecturing me, I said, hey, do you want to know my birth plan before you ask those questions? Or you tell me that? And she was like, what says here you had a doula? I said, and what does that mean to you? Like we were going at it before we even, got there. I had a guy do a cervical check without asking. It was so bad. He just came in and put his glove on. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, we got to check. And then and I said, that's the only guy I don't want to birth. That's the only one I like. I don't like any of them, but that's the one I don't want. You better believe who birthed my baby. But yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
no.
a little flash
As
forward for
luck
you.
would have it.
Yeah,
Oh,
of course. But basically, the next morning after the threat, I woke up at 5 a.m., called in, and they're like, we don't have any space. Call us back at 5 p.m. and we'll get you in tonight. But because they had said we're probably not going to have space, I was like already nervous. And then they had said something about how because I hadn't gone into labor naturally, I was higher risk and that I needed to be induced. And so I sat around all day just like nervous. And then at 3 o'clock, something just came over me. I'm like, I'm going to call and say that we're coming in because they had put this fear in me. So they said, okay, you can come in at 4. We went in and we are all prepared with all of our stuff. And they took me into a COVID prep room or something. And they wanted to start an IV. They pricked my left arm 4 times until my left arm was bleeding out. And she was like, oh, I must be pretty rusty. Let me try the other arm. Pricked me 4 times on the right.
Oh,
And
oh, you must be
I was like,
rusty.
yeah.
Oh,
And my doula is actually also a phlebotomist. And she was just like, what is
mortified.
happening? So like that was just again another sign of like probably not our best day to give birth here. This is probably not going. Got in, no dilation. I had the IV ports in my arm. They gave me the pill. I'm forgetting what it's called to dilate you.
Like
And
miso, cytotec,
yes, yes, the
cervidil, any of
miso.
those. Yeah.
Yep, started with that, and it was probably like 5 o'clock by that point when they started it. Nothing changed. 3 a.m. or somewhere in the middle of the night, they did another one. Nothing changed. So they were like, we could try a third. Mind you, they're doing a lot of cervical checks with all of this going on. So sometime the next morning, they decided to do the Folly balloon, and they were like, and they wanted to put pitocin in. So they start pitocin. And then they put the Folly balloon in, and they gave me, and I could be wrong, but they just said it was they're like, do you want fentanyl? And I was like, isn't fentanyl like a crazy drug that you see on the streets? And they're like, well, you can breathe it and it'll help you through you're gonna have contractions, Pitocin starting. And I was like, okay. So I'm breathing the stuff. It started wearing off, and I was like, this is it. This is the pain. I'm gonna breathe through it. I'm gonna labor. I wanted to labor at home, but I'm here now. And the balloon, if anyone's had it, is incredibly uncomfortable because it's prying you open. You have the strings hanging out, the different cords, and they were trying to get me to squat with it. That wasn't helping. And I didn't really sleep at all the night before. So now I've gotten up at 5, gone into the hospital by 5 p.m., haven't slept all night. And now I'm trying to go get into active labor. And we had the balloon in for maybe, again, I'm messing up the timeline, but maybe 2 hours, 3 hours. And my son's heart rate started to drop. They were like, we need to look into this. Isn't looking good. We got to get this out. They get it out. And then I think at that point they broke my water, or they did another cervical check, broke my water, which then put me on a timeline. And by all I know is that by 11 p.m. the second day, Tuesday night, I was like, I need an epidural. Like I can't breathe through this pain anymore. I'm exhausted. I haven't slept. I'm ready to like not give up, because I had this like intuitive hit that it was just starting, but it barely 4 centimeters dilated. I was like, I have a long way to go. So they did the epidural, and this was a hospital that had one anesthesiologist for the whole hospital, not just one for the maternity ward. And I was so exhausted. They said, and there had been some discussions with doctors in the room in front of me. We don't know what to do. And what do we think here with like the Folly balloon? After that didn't work, after breaking my water, there were a lot of things where like they were talking in front of me, but not with me, if that makes sense. And so after they did the epidural, they looked at my husband and my doula and they said, you guys get some rest because she's going to go to sleep now and she's going to wake up to push. That's what's going to happen. So they didn't tell me to eat before the epidural either, because I know that a lot of hospitals won't, they say you can't eat. So I hadn't eaten because of all the stress of what I had gone through. So I really hadn't eaten since at home on Monday at lunch. And now it's Tuesday night at 11. They give me the epidural and they say, oh, by the way, you can't eat. And I was like, I'm exhausted. I've been in active labor all day, or not active, but whatever. I don't know if it's considered active, but a lot of contractions with the Pitocin. And the nurse was like almost like tucking me in. She's like, all right, get some sleep. And all of a sudden, because they had cranked up the Pitocin now that the epidural was in, I felt my body expand rapidly. And they say that the transition's like the hardest part of your labor and it hurts the worst. And I start screaming out, and they were like, I was like, I'm feeling everything. This epidural isn't working. And she was like, no, no, sweetie, you're going to go to sleep. It's just, you're scared, you're tired, like you're fine. And I was like, I looked at my doula and I like signaled for her. And I actually was in so much pain, which I know pain is normal in labor, but I did have Pitocin in my system and I was exhausted. I called out for my own mom as if I was dying. Like I was like, I am so exhausted. Then my baby's heart rate started dropping. And the nurse runs in and goes, she feels feverish. And they go, this is by like 12 now, maybe 12:30. They're like, she has 103 fever. She's unwell. We need to get antibiotics in her, because from all of the cervical checks, I didn't know this because they didn't tell me until after birth, I had developed chorioamnitis. So now we're on another like part of a timeline because of the infection. They had a fetal monitor on him going on. And I said, I need a different epidural. This isn't working. Like this hurts. Everything hurts. And they're like, They're like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a catheter so we can prove to you that your epidural's fine and you're not going to feel anything. They put the catheter in and it felt like someone stabbed me. And I'm screaming out and I'm like, I'm yelling cuss words. I'm just like, please listen to me. Like, my poor husband was just like trying to hold my hand at this point. And so they go get the anesthesiologist. She came back in the room and she said, if she's about 8 centimeters now, like we can't do anything. Like we can't, I'm too busy. Like and I knew because of talking about they're the only one for the whole hospital. So they wouldn't fix it. And then at about 4 a.m., because of they said I was close to 10, they're like, let's start pushing. And I'm like, I'm exhausted. I have no urge. There are these two, and I kept saying, I'm not pushing. I was like, I'm not pushing without the doctor. They're like, the doctor's not here for that part. Like, we got you. And the nurses were actually at least the saving grace. Like, they were really nice, but they're like, you got to start pushing. So they're having me like pull on a bar to push. And I just it felt like someone making you try to poop when you don't have to poop. You're just like, I don't have to poop. There's no, well, I can't just sit here and pretend to poop. What is the point? And then after an hour of just, I felt like it was like my fake pushing hour. The nurse said, okay, we're going to start. I need you to start pushing like you're taking a poop. I'm like, with all due respect, I took a course because I did your pushing and I was like, I would like to push using my abs in the way that I am informed. And she was started getting like fighting with me and fine. And I was like, I had the second wind come back and I was like, look, we're going to do it my way. She goes, fine, we'll do 2 your way and 1 my way. And so even that was a negotiation on how I was going to push. And so whatever the second win was, I don't know if it was Gatorade or a popsicle or something, like I did like really like conscious breathing and pushing through the pain for the second hour until 2.5. So 4 a.m., 5:30, 6 a.m. rolls around. And then the doctor's, I think maybe you have another hour before we got to get you to a C-section, but my shift ends in an hour and your fever's still high. So we'll have to talk with the next doctor coming in. So I kind of just had I'm exhausted. I'm just not really going to do this. And was just like pretend. I was like, in my mind, I was like pretend pushing. I was so exhausted. Then in walked the doctor that I didn't want to deliver me. And he was like, I'm going to give you another 45 minutes. And if the baby's not out, we're going to surgery. And sometime in that 45 minutes, I started getting the fetal ejection reflex. Thank God. And I actually didn't know what that was till later. And it felt to me like I was going to throw up, but at the top of the throw up, instead of throwing up out of my mouth, my body was pushing down. And I was like aware of that. And so they were like, okay, I think she's on her own time. Let's let her lead the way for these pushes. But they still couldn't get in. And the doctor or the nurse was looking at the clock and she's like, the doctor's going to be back any minute. But lo and behold, so at 9 a.m., they're like, he should be walking any minute. Luckily, he didn't come back or he got tied up in another C-section. So he actually didn't come back until 9:50, which is when my son was born. But I just rode those waves on the fetal ejection reflex. And 10 minutes before he was born, one of the nurses was like, let's try letting her bladder out with the catheter and see if that helps. And I was like, I don't want another catheter. I don't want another catheter because they're doing the straight one where it's just like they go in to relieve it. And I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And they're like, this might be the way. Like this might be it. And my husband was like, you can do it like one more time. And then he came out. But what I wasn't aware of is that because of the choreo and because of the 4 hours of pushing and all of it, I was so unaware of what was going on. They were like, as soon as he came out, I was like, I want to hold him, but he wasn't breathing. So then they took him over. There were like 5 people in the room that I hadn't noticed were there, like waiting. And I was like, where's my baby? I was like screaming. And then the doctor starts pulling at my placenta cord. And I'm like, stop. I'm like, I can't deal with any more pain. No more pain. No, I just kept saying no more pain. And then he sits up and he goes, you have an infection and I have to get this out of you right now. And that was the first I had been told that I had infection. I had been told I had a fever, but I hadn't been told that I had an infection to my face, or at least that I was aware of. So they pull the placenta out more or less. And then I'm like, because I didn't have the epidural. So it's like, if you're going to stitch me, numb me, give me numbing, give me something. Because I was just like, no more pain. He just stitched me. And then he goes, thank you and have a nice day. And he walked out of the room. And then, yeah. And then they brought my baby over to me. And luckily, thank God, Declan was fine. That was the silver lining. But at that point, I looked at my husband, I started crying. He said he thought I was crying happy tears. And I said, I'm so sad. And he goes, why? I said, because I wanted more kids. Like it was so traumatic for me in those moments that I was just like, I don't think I could do this ever again. And I've processed a lot now to be so excited and wanting to do it again. But it was just and this sounds probably really dramatic, but it was my experience. The only way that I could put words around it for the first like maybe 3 months was like it felt like being a prisoner of war because it was the things happening to you and not feeling that sense of control, which I also was educated by you to know that I should be able to have that control and I should be aware. And it was just like you said with the matches, it was just like a series of unfortunate events that led to luckily a happy healthy baby, but the process was like nothing I could planned or imagined.
But also didn't give you a healthy, happy mama. So it doesn't really do us
Yeah.
any good to have a healthy, happy baby, quote unquote, when we have a half dead
Yep.
mom, right? That doesn't work. We can't have a
Yep.
great baby and a mom that's barely making it, or a mom that is riddled with so much abuse, which don't let me speak for you, but hearing
Yeah.
your story, it feels like at every turn, at every corner,
Every turn.
you were met with resistance and demands and obstetrical abuse and power dynamics and people trying to pull rank on you, even though you're the one who is giving birth.
100%. And no feeling of like safety or groundedness. Just a lot of this is what's happening. This is what like yeah, it was just this. And I had a doula and she herself had 7 kids and she told me later when it was appropriate, she's I've never been to a birth like yours. I've been to some bad ones and some long ones, but like nothing will ever compare to that. And I think she surrendered pretty early on to just being almost like a nurturing mother figure versus even trying to go with the doctors because there was no I don't know. I don't know what was going on in that hospital, but it was pretty gnarly for sure.
I'm so sorry for that. I think it is really unfortunate and also a very common story that you quote unquote do all the right things, you take all the right
Yeah.
classes, you have a doula physically with you,
Yep.
right? Literally in the room with you. And
Yep.
you're still abused by the system. You're still abused by the people who are tasked with keeping you safe and bringing that
Yep.
safety. I know that you're quite a woo person like me.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about the energy? Like when you tell your story, for me, I can see how the energy was not aligned. I can see how we were forcing your body to do something it
To do
wasn't
something.
ready. Yeah, I can see how even the energy of going into the hospital was based in fear and not
Oh,
in confidence, not
yeah.
in joy, not in excitement of, okay,
Yeah.
I'm ready for this induction. I want this induction. I'm happy for it. I'm ready to get my body going and my baby here.
Yeah.
Yours was made out of fear of, I guess if I don't have any other options, this is what I have to choose. Or
Yeah.
I guess if I'm the other alternative to stay pregnant forever because they told me that I wouldn't have any room. Like, talk to us energetically about just about that.
Yeah. First, I'll say that we named Declan after it sounds silly, but Jason Momoa played a character on a random show that like did not do well, but he played this like unbeatable character named Declan that was like always saving the day and like escaping the bad guys. And he was just this like hero that would like never die. And so we joke we're like only Declan could make it through that and just come out like all
Here I am.
he probably has some level of birth trauma like I do, but he was more or less very healthy, like never lost birth weight, latched, like all was well with him. So that part of it, thank God, I think I had a deeper knowing like he was okay. And I feel like it was something karmically like I had to face. And also was still new to New Hampshire. Like I didn't feel like I barely knew that the town of Bedford, which is like I am in a weird place where there's no town center, so I can choose basically 3 towns or cities to go to. And I had chosen Concord, and I didn't realize like I could have gone to Bedford. I didn't feel like I had these other options that I could lean on, and that was really hard for me. And it was such a process of letting go and surrendering that I couldn't get to because of the fear. And
Mm,
that it's like I had to experience the like you used the word resistance earlier. It's like I had to experience that resistance. Again, I don't know if it's a karmic thing or if it's just the soul contract I had with Declan, but there was something that got some energy that got moved in that I wish it didn't have to move that way, if that makes sense.
totally.
Um, but I will say that, and I think you said it in your courses, I've heard other people say it, like breathing into your butt and like relaxing when you're really breathing down. And I had thought I had tried that, but it wasn't till just last year on Declan's due date, my husband's birthday, I did a 37-degree cold plunge. And I got in the tub, and you might know Sam Whiting because he was in Boston for a while, breathwork teacher. And he was there right across from me. And I didn't know he was there. I'd closed my eyes when I got in. And that feeling of I can't get out of here until, because I'm here for this retreat, I'm here for 2 minutes, I have to stay in, all of that I can't get out of this and the only way is through came up for me because of the birth. And it's like the cold plunging in that moment. I opened my eyes and Sam was there and I was like, whoa, like I didn't know you were there. And then I was just like, it was like full release of all of that resistance of safety and breathing through it. And I'm like, God, I wish I could have cold plunged pregnant or done that before to have practice with that feeling, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So it's brought me into a new level of awareness and grounding, but also a new level of self-trust that I just didn't have to stand up to the doctors. And I've also had a few friends here that had C-sections find midwives and give birth at home for their second and their
Yeah.
third. So I've got some really good expanders now that, like you said, like just not knowing my options around here, like geographically, I think also kept me in that fear. So big release of fear and resistance, which I think has been really empowering.
And there was so much gaslighting in your birth, right? You're asking for pain medicine and they're saying, no, I'm not going to give you that. You're
Yeah,
asking them to turn up the epidural and they said, no, we're not going to call the anesthesiologist back.
yeah,
You're telling them, don't give me a catheter. I can literally feel everything you're doing down
yeah,
there. And they say, oh, but you'll make it through. This is the
yeah.
answer. It's just your story is just riddled with gaslighting of we know
Explaining.
better than you.
Yeah.
And for me, that really breaks my heart.
Yeah. That's, I think, where the sadness came in after the birth because of feeling that level of gaslighting and just questioning my own intuition. And then knowing that there's a reality where my body can do this. And that's what I'm excited for in the future.
Nice. Okay, that leads me to my second question, or my next question is you can do all the right things, you can take all the classes, you can read all the books, you can listen to all the
Yep.
podcasts, you can hire a doula to be with you, and things can still go in the direction that your birth went. What would you change if you could go back and redo Declan's birth?
I would give up the timeline and I would be at home until I felt anything start. And if that meant asking for another stress test and saying, look, a week ago he was fine, let's check, let's make sure the placenta's okay for my own peace of mind as a first-time mom. And then I'm going to go home and I'm going to wait and I'm going to see how I feel. My mom, I was supposed to be born in November and I'm a December 9th baby. So, and I was her first. And so and I have cousins who were 42 weeks in 2 days. So it's like the timeline is just this made up thing. And I would first and foremost give up the timeline and trust that empowered decision and give myself permission to let what the doctors say just go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. Or at least pick what's applicable to you, but not take blatant
Yeah.
statements as
With
your
threats.
own, right? And I think that is where so many birth stories take a nasty turn because you want to believe your healthcare providers. You do.
Yeah.
You want to trust them. You
Yeah.
want to think that they are there for your best interest and that they have your birth plan in their mind when they're helping you make these decisions. Unfortunately, and this is obviously not, this is one of those situations where you're like, not all doctors, duh, no shit, not all doctors, but
Yeah.
a lot of them, that's not the case. And a lot of times, that's not the care that we're getting in the US health system
Mhm.
in the maternity care ward.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of it is very blanket statement and it has nothing to do with your birth goals and it has nothing to do with, I hesitate to say it has nothing to do with your safety, but I think I do believe that if we were actually out for the safety of women and children, we wouldn't see this 39-week induction plague take over our country. We wouldn't see people be forced into inductions that they don't want and
Yeah.
don't need. We wouldn't see all of this abuse happening systemically from top down to our patients. If it was really about the health and safety of moms
Yeah.
and babies, we would be doing almost everything differently.
1000%. And what was really sad and eye-opening for me is I went through my birth trauma and I went in on Monday. He was born on Thursday. That was crazy enough. And I am always on social media. I went dark. Obviously, I was giving birth and people knew that I'd gone in. I think I'd made a post on Monday and like I had messages from like my friends at Barry's, "Hey, are you okay? Like I don't want to like because it was just so dark." But anyway, I came out of it and 2 weeks later I had friends with the same due date. Both of them had almost the exact same experience, except they had required blood transfusions. So
Wow.
then you're like, so you went through all the exact same thing and you had to get blood transfusions. Holy crap. This is scary. It's scary and it shouldn't be scary. And that's the thing that I think I still have a little bit of work to do around the fear, but I've found myself having dreams of just giving birth in random places this week, where I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a good sign. And I have, like I said, I have a good friend who, after a C-section, had a VBAC at home in her bedroom and with an amazing midwife and doula. And she was like, it was like the coolest thing I've ever done. So I've got good stories keeping me going.
We love a good H-back. Okay, going forward, obviously we can't go back and redo Declan's birth, but if you decide that having more children is for you, what do you think you would choose differently?
I think I'm still sitting with home birth versus hospital birth. I will start with a different, like I had a pretty good, I had a really interesting experience I didn't mention with my pregnancy in that I started being seen in Boston because I was still technically insured and living in Boston, even though we were up in New Hampshire because of the pandemic. So I saw a Boston doctor for 28 weeks. I saw an Indiana doctor at home for 3 weeks at the like 30-week mark. And then I switched to New Hampshire. And so I saw 3 different OB offices and I had pros and cons of all of them. New Hampshire, not so many pros. But I think if I am to go to an OB practice, I will switch and do that for maybe the first part and then look for a midwife if all things are looking good and healthy and have a doula, potentially yourself with me that can rear their voice and help me. But yeah, I'm still sitting with the potential of a home birth and
Yeah.
just feeling into that.
Just not going into that system that fucked you up the first time.
Yeah, I'm like, I
You
really don't
know?
need to go back there. Like, I
Yeah.
don't really do like a vengeance or revenge birth or something. I'm like, I can just pick another location and a
But
different
that
set.
will be your Avenger birth. That will
Yes,
be the healing birth. That
it
will be
will.
the birth that almost rebirths you and your confidence and your ability to trust yourself and your body and
Yeah.
it restores the faith within you. I think that will happen at a
Yeah.
home birth a lot easier than it
And a
will
hospital
at
birth.
a
Because
hospital.
it's going to be, that's what one of my friends was saying too. It's going to just bring up this happened then, and your brain's going to be so focused on what happened then and what. So, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Cool. If that day ever comes, I'm excited for you. I'm really sorry that your first birth took the turns that it took. Know that you're not alone in that. I think
Yeah.
your story is very similar to thousands of people out there, especially
Yes.
in the
So
US.
many.
Yeah, and that's sad. It's really, when we hear traumatic stories like this, our brain wants us to believe that will never happen to us. And that's rare. And that is probably a one-off thing. Or there were probably situations and factors that are so individualized, but unfortunately, that's not the case. I think your story
Yeah.
is a very generic story in the hospital system
Yes.
in the US. It
Yes.
happens a lot.
Yes. And that's why, like, I am not shy about talking about it because I'm like, that it just, we need to continue to do the work for people and spread awareness around it.
Mhm. And what kind of work have you been doing around healing and processing all of that?
I think just continuing to share my story. I think every time I share it, I learn something else about myself. I see something else differently. I'm definitely not a believer in like burying things and just that time will heal. So there's that element of it. There's obviously planning and envisioning what I want in the future. And then for me, I know it sounds crazy, but the cold plunge for me, it was like another level of awakening and releasing. And after that first one at a retreat with guidance where I felt like I was back in the hospital because I couldn't get out. Like the only way out is through, and I stuck through the 2.5 minutes. And I got out. Like there were two women who were moms that were in their 40s on the retreat with older kids, and they were bawling. And I was like, they're like, Garrett, whatever you just released moved us to tears because they could see it in me. And so every time I get in and I breathe down, it's for me, I'm like, okay, like this is what trusting your body feels like and moving through that. So I think just continuing to work on my breath and trust and sit in that is huge. Yeah. And then also, I'm super, like you said, woo woo and reading spirit babies and connecting with the next little soul. And what are they going to be like? And what are they going to need? What do they want? What's their plan? So.
I love that. Garrett, thank you so much for sharing your birth story with us. Truly, I am sorry that it was so traumatic for you. I'm sorry that it turned out the way that it did, but I am really inspired and I'm moved by the way that you have turned this into so much. You've turned it into a healing process for you. You've turned it into a place where you are so much more connected with yourself and you've done so much self-discovery, so much processing, coping, healing. But in addition to that, you've turned it into a business and these products. So talk to us
Mm.
about what your postpartum was like and how that led you to starting
Mm.
Koze.
Yeah. So I came home obviously feeling like I had been hit by a train. My mom was there to greet me, which I'm so grateful for. And we handed her the baby and we took a 2 hour nap until I had to feed him. Like we were just so exhausted. But when my milk started to come in, the cami that I had bought in like a XL or whatever big size, I woke up from that nap and I was also swollen from the antibiotics and the all the drugs because I took all of them, right? I had red marks and I was like, my cami is not fitting. This is really uncomfortable. I'm starting to leak. And so I had remembered that there's this woman that I think is like a spirit guide in real life and doesn't know it. She was one of my Barry's bootcamp clients, introduced me to my husband. And then before I gave birth, she sent me 5 packs of 100 nipple pads. Because she was like, I was a big leaker, you're going to be a big leaker. Little did she know she was guiding me to like my future in business. And so I went to the pads and I was like, I can't put them in this cami because the cami is giving me red marks. So let me put my bra on. And my friends always joke, they're like, we don't remember your boobs pre-baby. I'm like, yeah, not memorable. That's it. There was like nothing really to see. Like you wouldn't think about them. But I ended my pregnancy from a B cup to a double E. So I went to the
Wow.
double E bra that I was wearing at the end of pregnancy and it was too tight. So I'm like, where the hell do I put the nipple pads if my bra is too tight, my cammy's too tight? So I just put on a sweatshirt and I started leaking into the sweatshirt. And with the postpartum sweats plus the leaking, I started sleeping on a towel. And meanwhile, I'm trying to get my latch down. I had to use a nipple shield, which was fine. I was really lucky to have a lactation consultant come to the house. Unfortunately, it's a whole other story, but the hospital told me not, like I instinctively wanted to try to get him to latch. And they're like, oh no, you don't need to do that yet. Like he doesn't need to, don't worry about that. And then I'm like, no, but I want to try. So in the hospital, I had been trying without guidance for about 8 to 10 hours. And I started cracking and bleeding in the hospital. So I
Mhm.
left that part out. But by the time I got home, my nipples were I was not only starting to leak, but I was really sore because they were cracked and bleeding, which, happens to some people. And so as I'm going through the pain, I'm crying, I'm underslept, I'm extremely engorged. I have nowhere to put these. I was like calling them appendages. Like they were just these big foreign objects. I know so many women can relate to that feeling when your milk comes in and the engorgement's so bad. I had a Haka, but the Haka kept falling off. I'm a huge fan of the Haka. I use it all the time, but I just kept thinking, oh, the engorgement's gonna end or the leaking's gonna end. And I pretty much leaked through 5 months of heavy leaking and gigantic boobs, but I didn't have the mental bandwidth to go bra shopping. And I didn't know where to start. And so there was this one day where we had these giant mason jars. My husband's a little bit of a hoarder and like still can and do all these things. these two giant mason jars. And it was the first day in April that it was like sunny and nice, and Declan was napping. So we went to my husband was, let's sit on the front porch in the sun. I was like, okay, but I'm leaking and I'm hot in my sweatshirt because postpartum sweats. So I sat on my front porch. Luckily, we don't really see a lot of people, with two mason jars on a chair, just bent over, leaning like this, just letting the milk flow into these jars. And I'm like, I need something. I have to have something to help me with this. And I was like, God, I wish I had a diaper for my boob. And I said it then. And then, like, at 12 weeks postpartum, I jokingly made a post about it. And then it took me 18 months to then, when my son was 18 months, I was like, I'm going to start a company to invent this, because I would have slept in it. I would have worn it around the house. Like, I tried putting the haka on while I was baby wearing, and it was fun. Like, yeah. So that was the pain point. That was the kind of aha. And my mom had shared with me too. She's like, look, I was a super leaker. I never stopped leaking. And I very much take after her genetically with all my health issues and all of it. And so I started just putting things together. I think I probably texted or got on the phone with you early too. I was like, what's your opinion? What do you think? You gave me some really helpful feedback on what you would do. And anyway, we're almost ready to launch that product. But in the meantime, I also wanted to make an easier, less messy nipple and lip balm, because the nipple balm I was using is a great brand, great product, but I hated dunking my finger in the jar and then wiping it on my boob, but then being in bed and then wiping my gunky finger on a burp cloth. And I'm like, there's so much mess and stress in motherhood that my bond with Declan was totally thwarted by my stress around leaking and my stress around wiping gunk off my finger. And it sounds crazy to say, oh, creating these two consumer packaged goods products would help you bond with your baby. But for me, if those two stressors were gone, I would have been able to be in that oxytocin bubble much more like fervently or connectedly, because I was just like, yes, I want to snuggle you. And I would put two burp cloths over each boob so that I just wouldn't keep dripping all over myself. So I just believe that if we can reduce mess and stress in motherhood, whether it's through products or inventions or whatever, knowledge, then we can better bond with baby. And when we better bond with baby, we have better maternal mental health outcomes. And that's huge for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see how it's a ripple effect that it really starts at birth, right? If
Yeah,
you have a better
1000.
birth, then you're much more likely to be able to be flexible and take the hits of postpartum. But if you are starting from a very traumatized, abused place, those minor hits in postpartum are going to seem very major, and your major hits in postpartum are likely to send you over the edge. And that's a really tough place to be. Okay, tell us about your nip gloss. I'm so interested. You can use it for nipple balm and for lip gloss?
Yes, you can. It is our first rounds that it has a 2-year shelf life, but that we just produced in the fall is 70% organic. And our next round coming up is 100% organic, which is really exciting.
Nice.
There's actually a pelvic floor therapist in Boston that's using it as a vaginal moisturizer. Fun fact. Because it
Wow.
has a really good set of ingredients, and it has the application. So it opens with one hand, which moms love because you can hold baby and open it. And then it's the same issue with the delivery system being easier to just squeeze out on your nipples. Same thing vaginally. If you're dealing with vaginal dryness during breastfeeding, you don't necessarily want to put gunk on your finger and wipe it up there.
It's
It's
up
easier
there,
to
yeah.
just so that's just like a fun aside. But I love it just because of the ease of use. And I'm like, why have people not done this before? And then the waves on the branding are actually based off of my pregnant belly, which is a fun fact. People think it's a sunset. It looks like a sunset, but it's actually taken from all the different bump pictures from my maternity
Oh
shots.
my
And
gosh.
then they're just stacked on top of each other, which is really fun. But we've got jojoba's oil, we've got coconut butter, castor oil, we've got sweet almond oil, and it's non-toxic. It's put in a tube made of PLA plastic, which takes less energy for the environment. The cosmetic box that comes in is Forestry Stewardship Council certified. So we also are trying to take a sustainable approach, because what I noticed in the space is that there are so many amazing products, but a lot of the ones that we're seeing on the shelves of Walmart and Target were like companies, and I don't blame them. I'm so grateful, right? I'm standing on the shoulders of giants being like, we need to create everything for postpartum. And they did it all so fast and so oh my God, we have to do everything from the underwear to the pads, all the stuff, that a lot of it isn't necessarily sustainable and it isn't necessarily all natural. And so we want to continue to add to the white space, but improving it so it's also sustainable and non-toxic and in better packaging and all of those things, which is, it's challenging from a cost standpoint, but we're doing our best and making some headway.
I think that's the future. I think we've reached a place where we realize it may be better to invest a little bit more money and have that longevity, have the organic ingredients, have the sustainable packaging, have the less emissions in making this product and saving our earth along the way. And I know that at least people in my circles, they're more willing to spend the extra money if they know that they're getting a good quality product, if they understand that it is supporting a good, honest, transparent, women-owned business. And
Yeah.
I think that message is going to hit hard with a lot of people, which is great.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And one thing that I think is really important is like a lot of people like yourself, and I think even myself early on with coaching too, we're so lucky we can do things remotely now and that we really can be one man operations. And as a mom, I knew that I wanted to build a team early, which is counterintuitive as a startup because no one's getting paid. But what's really interesting about our team is that my mom is the head of business development, and she obviously shared the super leaker issue. And my parents divorced when I was young. So she had 3 under 4 by herself while my dad was overseas in the Air Force. So she's a superhero. And then my COO got pregnant in 2023 and she gave birth at just 24 weeks, like when she hit 24 weeks. And she spent over 6 months in the NICU last year. Her baby's doing amazing now, but like she has been through that iteration. My CMO had a stillbirth in 2022, 2 miscarriages last year. Now she's pregnant, but like also so connected to the mission of just there is so much going on here that we have work to do. And so we really are a team of women standing for what we believe in is possible for the future of maternal health and our relationships with our babies not being thwarted by medical challenges.
I love that. I just got like full body chills. It's so inspiring to see you changing the world. And I hope you can see that you're literally changing the world. Like you're going to change so many lives in just the way that people operate with their new baby. And I think that is super special.
Thank you. It feels like the hardest thing I've done besides Declan's birth so far. We're in the thick of it, but I think everything that's worth it is hard, but in a good way.
Everything that's worth it is hard in a good way. I love that. So you mentioned at the beginning of the episode that we include your lip gloss in our client packages, and we do, and
Yeah.
our people love them. They always talk about the texture of the lip gloss and how much they love that it is smooth and it's light, but it's nourishing and healing for your nipples. And for a long time, I actually didn't know that you could use it as lip gloss. And then I started to be like, and you can use that as lip gloss. And people were like, what? And I was like, yeah, put on your lips. And now people are like, oh my God, I can't decide if it's better for my nipples or my lips. And I just love it. So I love that you call it nip gloss. I also think that's just super
Thank you.
creative and funny, kind of.
Thank you. We toyed with the name for a while, but we were like, we have to call it what it is, and the applicator speaks for itself. And you actually were the one before we even knew that we were going to call our absorbent disposable bra nipple diapers. It was a name I had circulating. I was like, I don't know what people are going to think about that name. And you were like, you have to call it what it is because there are some companies, I won't name names, but you mentioned one that you're like, they lose sales because people don't know what that is because it's just a name that's not relevant to what it is. And so I took your advice. I was like, we got to call it what it is.
I love it. Hey, no better marketing than telling people exactly what they're getting with it. Tell us a little bit more about your nipple diapers. Are they launching and you have a bra that's coming out? I know some of this is probably still secret since everything's not launched and hit the shelves yet, but what can you tell us about your new products?
Yeah. So we are finalizing the sizing of the nipple diaper right now, and we're planning a September launch, which is really exciting, nailing down all of the packaging. And basically, it almost looks, we called it a vest for a while with our manufacturer because we don't work, we it makes sense to say, oh, it's an absorbent disposable bra because people then can think bra. Okay, I know what you're talking about. But the way it fits is more like a vest or like almost like what you'd see someone wearing after a mastectomy because it's really full coverage and very cozy, very soft. The outside of it feels like a soft diaper because we wanted the play on the diaper and also the fact that it is something you can throw away. And I know that a lot of people are like, why would you make it disposable? The other option is buying an absorbent reusable bra that could be from $40 to, let's say, I've seen one as expensive as $180. The issue with that is your boobs, once they regulate, you just bought a triple E or double G bra that is not going to fit you in a few weeks. And you might have to buy more than one unless you want to wash it every day. Because if you're a super leaker like myself, you don't want to sit in that milk and then put that dirty bra on because you also don't want to create thrush. So it's a hygiene product. And I always tell people it's unsexy, right? It's like a tampon. You need it when you need it. It's not this sexy, beautiful, it's not the beautiful set of pajamas you want to bring to the hospital, but it's like when you need a tampon, you need it. And when you need this when you're leaking, you will be able to access it. And the back of it is a really soft super mesh that is a play on the hospital underwear. So you also feel like, okay, I can throw this away just like I'm throwing my hospital underwear away. And do we feel bad when we throw tampons away? No. And if you are someone that uses a period cup, good for you. That's okay. You might not be our customer, and that's okay too. But there are a time and a space for disposable products when we need them. And at least in this case, we know that at this point, biodegradable. The mesh we cannot access until we're selling millions of units, but there is going to be a disposable or a biodegradable mesh. And then the war in Ukraine kept us from getting these biodegradable snaps, but our snaps are made from PLA plastic. We're definitely conscious and we know our plan to ramp up to fully biodegradable. But I kind of joke because the best diapers that fit my son the best are Huggies, and I don't think twice about throwing those away. So
Yeah.
it's not, I know that the sustainable conversation doesn't really mean anything to some people too, and that's okay. But I am so excited because the way that the snaps work, you can just pull one side down to feed. And if you don't want to use your haka in the middle of the night, you can leak into that other side and then change it out.
I love that. And there's no milk storage component to it. It's just going to collect the milk and that you're like excess, right?
Yes. And I love so many of the milk collector products out there. I was like, I had that. I use it. I will use it for the next baby. And there were certain times when I was vacuuming or doing laundry that I'm like, I don't need to collect this milk. I can't collect this milk right now because, my house is not going to stay on. I just don't want to have to wash another sweatshirt. I don't want to have to wash another t-shirt. And like I mentioned earlier, my regular bras didn't fit. And I also am just someone who doesn't really like to wear real bras if I can avoid it.
Yeah, same. I rarely have on the proper undergarments or what people would consider
Same.
proper undergarments. Even
Yeah.
like out and about, I always say that they feel so constricting to me, and I like to just live a free life. And
Yeah,
um,
same.
I free ball it, or I guess free boob it more times than I actually
Yep.
have on a bra. So you're
Yeah.
speaking directly to my heart. And I know that a lot of our listeners do think about the earth, and I know that it's progressively becoming a more popular conversation of our earth is not going to be here forever if we don't start taking care of it. And so we
Yeah.
have to start thinking a little bit ahead to start thinking about the products that we have and how they're going to impact our environment. I know a lot of people don't think about that as well, but I think you're in the right community
Yeah.
to be appreciated.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think it is something that, like I mentioned, if we're creating a company that's here for the long haul, these are the conversations we have to have, and these are the
Yeah.
foundations that we have to build from. And that's where I want to start. And it may be a high bar to set, but it's important to me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I stand you. I'm right here with you.
Thank you.
I support you all the way. Okay, so I guess one of my remaining questions is just what's next for you? What does next look like in your personal life, in your professional life, or anything? What is the next step for
Yeah.
Garrett Wood?
I put two of the diapers up on my boobs, I want to say maybe a year ago. And I was just still, we were working on our design that day. And I looked at my husband, I said, I'm not having another baby until this bra's done. So I'm really excited that we at least have a potential launch date because we all know how launch dates go, right? It's
Yeah.
who knows really, but we have much more clarity around that. And that also makes me excited because I genuinely feel like birthing Nip Gloss was an energetic baby. And that's part of why I've been dealing with secondary infertility. And I'm excited to have a third real baby and be pregnant and use my own products. That's incredibly exciting for me. We're waiting to hear back from a reality TV show. I can't say what one, but if you think about what is reality and business, then you might be able to put those two together. So that would be really exciting for us this year. I don't know if it would air this year, but it would air either end of this year or early next year. So that's huge. It's very top of mind right now because we should be hearing any day. And then whether or not we go on the show, we're hoping to do another fundraise so that we can get more products in the works and just grow and scale.
That is awesome. Oh my God. I'm super excited for all your future endeavors. You mentioned it, but I've been around since the beginning of your journey. I've been able to watch you grow and flourish and branch out and have these products be born. And as weird as it may seem, I've been able to watch you be reborn as a human too.
Mhm.
And I've told you that before, but I think it has been so enlightening and again, just inspiring. I know I said that already too, but I do think that a lot of people sometimes will get into these ruts in life and it can feel very defeating. But to have just average everyday women like you and I out there doing things to show people like you can make a difference. Pick yourself
Mhm.
up and let's create a product. Let's create a course. Let's create what you wish that you had. I
Yeah.
know that I feel very inspired by you.
Oh, thank you. And your course was like, I can still picture like going through the sidebar and like the excitement I had to learn, but also like the way you teach stuck with me. And obviously, I feel like it was all a karmic contract situation with what I went through in the hospital. And like you said, it created a rebirth for myself, but it was just so important for me to know my options and to have that information. And so I'm a fan of yours as well.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much. We could go mushy gushy all day. So, if people were interested in learning more about your products or getting their hands on Nip Gloss and they don't happen to be a TBH client, so you didn't get one for free in your client box, you got to go get your own. Where can people find the Nip Gloss? Where should we be watching out for your new product launches? And how do we stay up to date on the things that Cozy is doing?
Amazing. Thank you for asking. We are on cozycozy.com. It's spelled Kozekoze. So that's a little tricky, but cozycozy.com. We're launching on Amazon in June, and that's exciting because we need to be there. We need it when we need it, right? It's a
Yep.
personal hygiene product. And then on Instagram at Cozy Cozy Mama and on TikTok at Cozy Cozy Mama, we're talking about all things motherhood. We have a weekly podcast, the Cozy Podcast, and information about products, sales, launches, etc. And I believe that you have a code that's HIHI
Yep.
in our
Got it.
system. So
Nice.
people can use that code on cozy.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes for you guys, and we'll link the Cozy website so that you guys can find that. And then maybe we'll link some of your socials too, Garrett, so that people
Oh
can
yeah,
connect with you and learn without the pressure of having to buy anything. They can just follow
definitely.
along with your journey.
Yeah, I'm at Garrett N for Nicole, Garrett N Wood on Instagram. And then our Cozy Mama TikTok account is really just my personal account. And we just changed the name for the awareness of it. And we're having a lot of fertility conversations over there with my journey and
Yeah.
kind of everything I've tried in 2 years and what I'm learning. And I just love sharing information over there and learning from other people as well.
Yeah, I love TikTok. It is a brutal place. Like you can get on the wrong side of TikTok
Oh, yeah.
so fast. But I love TikTok in the way that it is all the information that we wish we had, but no one is talking about. And those are the things that go viral. And I love it. I love it so much. I'm not going to call it a wholesome app because I don't think it's wholesome, but I do
Yeah.
love the wholesome connection that it fosters between people. And it can connect you to people that you would have otherwise never found,
Yeah.
stories you would have otherwise never heard, products you would have otherwise never known about. TikTok is a great place to do that.
1000%. And I feel you on that. I'm proceeding with caution, but I think just like the trauma that we can experience in birth and the isolation there, My eyes have just been so open to how not alone I am on the fertility journey as well, and so that's been really comforting.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks
Thank
for sharing
you.
your birth story. I know that it's cathartic in some sense, but I also know that anytime we talk about past traumas, it brings up a little bit of that. So thank you for sharing that with our people. Thanks for opening up your heart and your soul and just being present here with us today and helping other people know what the hospital system is like, even though it's not so beautiful, rainbows and butterflies, but at least to say, you know, you can do all the right things, quote unquote, and the system can still beat you up.
Yeah, 1000%, and I just appreciate you having me and having conversations like this because again, the more the better.
The more you know, the better. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you found some inspiration from Garrett. I'm super inspired by her. I love the Nip Gloss. It's like one of my favorite products. We give it to all of our clients. People love it, and I cannot wait for your launches of your new products. I am like just sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for that. So, thank you for being here with me today, Garrett. Listeners, until next time, go connect with both of us on Instagram. I'm at Tranquility by Hee or at the.birth.lounge. And you can check out all the links that we talked about today in our show notes. All right, until next time, bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly do value this community and I love hanging out with you. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent. It's an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who could use evidence-based information to help them have an informed and confident birth. I'd love to hear what you have to say and read your sweet words. By leaving us a review, you are helping other expectant mamas and their families find the podcast so that we can reduce birth trauma and improve maternity care in the U.S. one birth at a time. If you're interested in joining the Birth Lounge, go to thebirthlounge.com. If you want to connect with me on socials, you can find me at Tranquility by Hee on all platforms. Until next time, stay educated, stay supported, stay confident. Bye.